4 court could threaten to upend many of the issues, of course, where Justice Kennedy decided with the liberals. Of course, he was the offsetting vote to the conservatives. According to NPR, Kennedy believes that once rights are recognized, they will not be taken away. That includes the right to abortion that he helped to preserve, and the rights to gay people that he helped establish, including the right to marry and to be treated equally in our society. Of course, time will tell. I'm joined now by Nina Totenberg, NPR legal affairs correspondent and the author of the article, and Cecile, why do I do this? I've known you forever. Okay. Cecile Richards, former president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Thank you both. Nina, I've known you forever. You're probably the most famous person in covering the court. How do you see this? Just talk about, forget politics for 2 seconds, only now. If you're looking at this thing as a judicial process, picking the right, sort of a relatively conservative person, what's at risk if you're a progressive looking at the court right now? Are they really in danger of getting rid of Roe v. Wade, the undue burden phrase from the Casey case? Are they really endangering that right now, do you think?
Well, I think that in the worst case scenario, from the progressive point of view, Roe gets overturned, and I would say there's a decent likelihood of that. But just as likely is that the court starts making it easier and easier for states to regulate abortion, to make it very difficult to access abortion, so that in at least probably the 20 states where there are lots of laws that have been actually blocked until now, that those states will be able to do that. They will limit when you can have an abortion, how far pregnant you can be in order to get an abortion, the types of abortions available. They'll make it very difficult for clinics to operate, so that especially for poor and rural women who live very far away, it could make it very difficult in large swaths of the country to get an abortion.
Cecile, that seems to be the cutting edge right now, which is you don't create an undue burden, except you say things that seem reasonable to the non-person involved in it, the person not involved, the male voter, for example. And you go, okay, you should have hospital facilities available, hospital-type facilities. You can't just have some lean clinic operation. You have to have all the facilities of a big hospital if you're going to have this procedure. That kind of thing seems reasonable, but in often cases it means no clinics, no abortion rights. Your thoughts about that?
No, absolutely. I mean, and what Nina said is exactly correct. You know, I come from the state of Texas, where they've passed every possible regulation against abortion, and the goal of the legislature and the governor has been to end abortion access. And in fact, it was a Supreme Court case, the Whole Women's Health case, that ruled the laws in Texas unconstitutional. But that was a vote that, with another nominee to the court who opposes abortion rights, that case would likely go another way, and the result would be that there would be only a handful of doctors in the state that actually met all the requirements. None of these laws, and that was actually what was demonstrated in that case, none of these laws were actually passed for the health or welfare of women. They were actually passed to try to end abortion access. And I think one of the important things to remember, Chris, is that, abortion existed before Roe. It was simply illegal and unsafe, and young, healthy women died routinely in emergency rooms across this country. And that's what we're looking at again if this court, in fact, tips the other side.
Well, Leonard Leo, who's President Trump's advisor on judicial nominees, said this weekend that the warning from Democrats that Republicans are working to overturn Roe v. Wade is simply a scare tactic. That's what he's claiming. Let's there.
Well, it's not a...
We've been talking about this for 36 years, going all the way back to the nomination of Sandra O'Connor. And after that 36-year period, we only have a single individual on the court who has expressly said he would overturn Roe. So I think it's a bit of a scare tactic and rank speculation more than anything else.
Well, I don't really believe that. Of course, this is a stark contrast, which we all know, to what candidate Trump promised when he said he's going to pick pro-life judges. Let's hear Trump.
If we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court.
Well, according to NBC News, no nominee has said outright that their position is, but experts tell NBC that some have used coded language to send a signal to conservative activists that they would want to overturn Roe. Nina. Was that Nina?
I was just going to say, there are a ton of other issues for any nominee to the court, things that affect workers' rights, the environment, everything from consumers' rights to small business to you name it. And if you you just look at everything you do in a given day, the Supreme Court probably has issued an opinion that had some effect on that.
Okay,
And
let's talk health care.
so
Let's talk
as much as as much as Roe is the lightning rod, there will
is the
be
lightning
other
rod.
issues that come up.
Talk about the pre-existing conditions aspect of the Affordable Care Act. And it seems to me that John Roberts surprised everybody by saying it was constitutional, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, because it was basically a tax and the federal government has a right to tax. Dina, where will that stand now that there's no more individual mandate?
Well, Kennedy was in the minority in that case, so Roberts was the swing vote in that case, and I would have to say it's probably the only case I can think of that really infuriated conservatives. He's a very conservative justice. He's just not quite as conservative as Clarence Thomas and Antonin Scalia and probably Neil Gorsuch. But I think I counted 5 cases where he sided with the liberals, you know, and none of them, except for Obamacare, are the kind of ideological cases we think of. However, having said that, you know, for example, there's a case working its way up that was brought by Texas that tests whether the pre-existing conditions mandate in the Affordable Care Act that says you can't discriminate based on pre-existing conditions, whether that's unconstitutional. I have no idea where the members of the court stand on that, but it's a very big issue for lots of people who like the ban on discrimination against people who have pre-existing medical conditions.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to Cecile. Cecile, it seems to me that we all watch the news. You watch particularly when it comes to reproductive rights. One of the causes out there is the 20-week limit. In other words, after 20 weeks of pregnancy, you can't have an abortion. It seems to me that kind of a thing would be possible, plausibly accepted by the Supreme Court if it has another conservative on it. Your thoughts?
Oh my God, there's so many cases coming up through this court system that are at risk. I mean, so many, and as we know, in many of the states, and I think Nina really spoke to this, in many of the states, you have the right to safe and legal abortion, but absolutely zero access to it. And again, I think there are so many cases in which the undue burden has been the standard. This is why, frankly, and when we talk about what the impact is going to be, women in this country are enraged. And I think if we see this process go through, and again, it'll be very interesting to see what the questions are, women are already highly motivated to go vote. They're running for office in record numbers. I think what we're going to see out of the Supreme Court fight is a record number of women turning out to vote this November to protect their rights.
We'll see. I think you're going to see that. Anyway, Nina Potenberg, it's an honor to have you on. I do think, and Cecile, I do think the headlines coming out of the night's decision by the president will have to do with abortion rights. Anyway, up next, President Trump's attorney, that's right, that's his job, Rudy Giuliani, says it'll be great if Michael Cohen cooperates with prosecutors. He's urging Trump's fixer to tell them everything he knows about.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.